Welcome to episode 56 of the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. I'm your host, Veronica Hislop, a PhD candidate in molecular science and career partner with FoodGrads. This week on the podcast, I interviewed Evonne Chen, food, grocery, and nutrition data analyst at Pinto. Pinto is a product database and analytics platform for food, grocery, and consumer product goods. They help provide businesses of all sizes with the data and the tools to power personalization, help their shoppers find the best products for their health and lifestyle needs, optimize their product data online, and relay the nuanced product information that today's shoppers rely on when making purchasing decisions. In this episode, Evonne and I talked about all things data and how Evonne got into the field. Evonne is actually a graduate of a food science program, but she really loved data science. And because her school wasn't really giving her the tools to do so, she took it upon herself to create a self-directed data project on the side, not during school, which actually helped her get a job out of university in the field. Evonne gave me a better look at what a data analyst does, including the skills she is actively trying to develop herself, the softwares that she uses, and data communication. We rounded out the episode talking about some fun stuff, such as where she finds all these cool food and beverages posts that she shares on LinkedIn. So if you are a student looking to learn how to get into data science, or you just want to learn a little bit more about what exactly that is, or maybe just look for ways to make yourself stand out in the industry while still in school, then this is the episode for you. So enough with that introduction. Let's get on with the show. Thank you so much, Evonne, for taking the time to come out on the show. I have been seeing your posts pop up everywhere on LinkedIn, and I'm just loving your little summaries about products that you come across and tasting. And I just think it's such a fun way to get involved because the food industry is so vast and there's so much fun stuff. But more so than that, I want to know more about you because I think that your role is really cool. We've never interviewed anyone quite like you on the podcast. So I think this is going to be a great show. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me. And about my LinkedIn post, I think that the food industry is just such a supportive community on LinkedIn. So it's really fun to just be a part of it and also give a shout out to all the new and exciting brands that pop up.
For sure. There's so many, it's been so exciting watching all these new and upcoming brands come up within the past few years because they just come out with products that you never would have really thought about. And it's just fun to see new remixes on things where you don't have to go to the grocery store and just buy you do a lot of beverages, but maybe just buy, I don't know, iced tea, but it's so many different varieties. So it's super cool.
Exactly.
So I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we get into the episode, but I think we should start off by first talking about you. So would you be able to tell me more about your role in the company that you work for?
Yeah, just a little background is that I started as a data analyst at Pinto, but Pinto has since been acquired by another company called Spins. If you guys know of Spins, they're in the sales data world in the food and bev industry. But basically my role at Pinto, we look at data in accordance to all the food and beverage products that come in and also other just CPG products that come in. And we're able to tell with algorithms and things like that if a product is keto or vegan or gluten-free just simply by looking at the ingredients. But of course, we also take into consideration certifications and things like that. And so my job was basically looking at all the fun data at the back end and writing articles about that data. And now since that Vint has acquired Pinto, we also have point of sales data. So back in the day, it was just me thinking oh, this is interesting. And I think it's really popular. But now I have the chance to say that it actually is popular because we have the sales data to back that up. And so I think it's a good both data sets.
That's so cool because we talk about the fun aspects of food with the taste and the flavors and all that. But when you start to look at the data, I feel like you gotta be a unique person, but it can be really fun to just go through data. And I think that's really cool what you were mentioning to be able to look at the ingredients because I know that some companies might be plant-based or vegan, but they don't necessarily promote that because it's just maybe they don't think to promote it in that way. So it's cool that you're using data to demonstrate these different types of things.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always in the business's case, you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you don't say, hey, I'm plant-based or hey, I'm vegan. But there's also the other side of the story where sometimes like certifications cost a lot of money. And so they're not ready yet to make that jump, especially if you're selling online. You're still able to say that you're vegan if none of your ingredients have anything like that, like have any animal-based stuff. But I guess for a peace of mind, like most consumers would want the brand to have an official seal saying that it's vegan. So like you're fully confident that it's vegan. But yeah.
That really makes sense. And, I'm going to dive more into that a little bit later, but I've been dying to know more so about how you ended up into a data type position because you did go to school for food science. And I feel as though many students don't take their degree and go to that aspect where you are. They might go to account management or sales. So, would you be able to maybe walk me through that process of maybe when you were in school and how you got into this area or field?
Yeah, for sure. So I did go to the University of Wisconsin-Madison for food science. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but I did an internship in my junior year, and I realized that R&D is fun, but I don't know if I would want to do that for the rest of my life. I've always loved data, and in my mind, I always thought that there could be a way to play to both sides, like the food side as well as data. So I had like a quarter life crisis a few months before graduating. I was like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. And I just set out to teach myself how to do anything like data related. I started with Python and then I realized that was too big an endeavor. And so I moved to SQL and also VBA, which is like creating formulas in Excel and things like that. And I embarked on like my own data project. So I look at the end of the year, a lot of websites come out with like predictions of what's going to be the next big food trend, like the next year. So I looked at what was predicted to be the top. And then I checked out if that was actually true using like Google Trends data. So I looked at that data, parsed through it, and then I wrote an article about it. And I posted it on Medium, if you know that website. And then it got picked up by the Medium editors. They pushed my article out to the platform and as well as like a separate publication within Medium called Towards Data Science. They also picked up my article to be featured in their publication. So I thought that was pretty exciting to me. So I guess there was interest in food and data. That was just like confirmation on my side. And then I found Pinto because one of my friends was actually working there. And I just cold emailed Pinto and was like, I realized that you're in nutrition and food and data, and this is something that I really enjoy. And I sent them like my resume and also a link to the article. And I was like, please get back to me if you think I'm a fit. And eventually they did. So that's how I got my job and how I transitioned into data while still staying in like the food industry.
Evonne, that's amazing. That is so cool. Like props to you for doing that. Like that takes some initiative in that. Coming up with an idea, like really demonstrating like what you've been doing that helps get a job. That's awesome. So wow. Did you just watch YouTube videos? Did you grab a textbook from the library? Like how did you start teaching yourself?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of learning on YouTube. I use it to learn everything. So you guys ever check out the articles that I wrote, like all the graphs that I made. I learned how to use Tableau, which is like a data visualization tool, and also Photoshop to create all the assets, all of which that I learned on YouTube and also LinkedIn Learning because my university gives us a free subscription. So if any of you out there are still in school, and you should definitely check out and see if your school gives you a free subscription to LinkedIn Learning because I think it was a really good tool. But yeah, I just watched all the videos that were available on like SQL, Excel VBA, and like all the pivot tables, and also Tableau, which was the data visualization tool I was talking about. Yeah.
I know you did your cold email, but did you put any of this stuff like on your resume just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I did say that I know how to use like SQL and Tableau and Excel VBA, but I was like very upfront about it in the interview that I'm not an expert.
Hmm.
But I think that my advice to anyone else who wants to, who's in like food science, dietetics, nutrition, and wants to transition to data, having a data project is so valuable because anyone can say, oh, I can do SQL and I can do these things, but just having something like that someone else can see and someone else can go through and realize that you actually do know how to apply it, and especially how to marry both the food side and the data side together. I think data projects are very impactful and a lot of people don't pursue it because it takes a lot of time, but I assure everyone that it's well worth it.
Well, I'm gonna have to use you for some notes. Okay, so I'm not knocking, like, first of all, like, YouTube has been like, I feel like I'm aging myself in a weird way, even though I'm not that old, but like, I've seen YouTube grow since I was a teenager, and even since when I started in my first year of university, like, just the amount of educational content for like chemistry, there, it just wasn't really there at the time. And as I continue to go, I always go to YouTube, and just the stuff that's coming out of it. Like I was using like studying for my PhD candidacy by looking up international universities on like topics that just these videos didn't exist. And the pandemic really helped push a lot of this like good video content in the past few months, which is really cool. But no, I got to take notes from you because I have been really getting interested in like data science, like I've on the surface, but I feel like it's very overwhelming because I do analyze data for school. I use Origin Pro. I'm not sure if you're aware of that software, but I've been kind of wanting to dive more into the area, but I was like, I have no clue where to start. And I have no clue what would actually be valuable for the food industry except for Excel. I know a lot of them like Excel.
Yes, I know that a lot of people like in the food, dietetics, nutrition, or even just like broader science field, a lot of people use R because of like statistics and things like that, especially when it comes to research papers. Some companies do use that, but I would say that when it comes to data analysis, there's two fields. There's one where the company just wants you to use Excel to look at the data and you're not actually the person that's fully pulling it. And the second group of people like are those who actually use SQL and they actually query the data and pull the data and things like that. That's also something to look out for and something to think about, like which side you're more interested in. But yeah, definitely we'll share all the resources that I have. And I'm sure that it's changed a lot since I last looked at all these videos. But yeah.
Well, sorry. Well, one thing I just want to step back and take a second is you've been mentioning like SQL, and I'm not sure how many people are familiar with it. I'll be honest, I'm not very familiar with it. Would you just be able to briefly talk about what that is?
Yeah, so SQL is a querying language. It's to do with databases. So if you want to query a database, you use SQL in some places. Personally, at Pinto, we actually had a NoSQL like database. So meaning it's not a SQL database. It's based on how the data is structured within the database. So we had NoSQL, and I would say that most of the food science and the dietetic people that are in our company, we actually learned how to query on the job. Like we did, some of them came in without any data knowledge. Anything is possible. Yeah. So NoSQL is a little different than SQL, but I would say that both languages are pretty easy to pick up, given if you put in the time to learn it. Definitely easier than say Python or something like that.
That makes sense. I think as well with once you hit a certain threshold in the amount of data you have, it's a very intimidating thing to look upon as like an outside person and you just almost freeze up and you're like, nope, I'm not getting this is too beyond like my comprehension. But I'm guessing as you started to because you had that project to kind of work towards it, it really helped you have a northern star to navigate.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps, and also helps like that it was like in like the food space, and so you also have like your food knowledge to lean on, like nutrition knowledge to lean on. I think that we bring a very interesting sort of like viewpoint on the data. I think when it comes to data analysis, like the strength of the person who's looking at the data is in the fact that they could make sense of it. And so that's where like our knowledge really comes in and you're able to say like, oh, I have this interesting like hypothesis. Let me query the data to see if I can see anything around that area. Can I confirm or deny what I'm thinking of? Are beverages with like less than 5 grams of sugar really taking off? Are beverages with allulose instead of stevia like doing more on sale for things like that? I think that's like a really interesting perspective we can bring considering like everything we studied during college.
So, with that being said, what does a typical day look like for you currently? I know that you just talked about maybe an hypothesis, but what does that actually look like? Do you just sit in front of a computer all day, every day, or is there a little bit more to it?
Oh yeah, I think I have a pretty interesting role both when I was at Pinto and now I'm at Spin, like between two teams. I have, as a data analyst, I always sat between the data team as well as the marketing team. And basically, our job is to look at the data, but make it digestible to the broader audience and more interesting because some people, they're not just interested in numbers, they're interested in the story, right? Beverages that are with lower sugar content is doing well, but why? Everyone wants to know the why. And so my day to day would be we have campaigns, what we're working on, and also we work on a lot of like webinars and presentations about the trends in the food industry, both for like our clients and just like a broader audience. And so we'll set out on a category like beverages. And then we'll kind of look through the data and see what's interesting, see that like wellness sodas are popping up and what are the ingredients that are doing well, what are the flavors that are doing well, things like that, so that it could help like those in the food industry when it comes to R&D or even basically anything. I think data is so powerful. And that's sort of my day to day, just looking at data, making it fun. I think that's like the big gist of it.
And did you find that as you've gone through this experience, that you've maybe had, because there's a joke in my lab where my supervisor is always like, it's fun to collect the data, but you also have to actually analyze it. And because so much of data interpretation can be personal, I don't want to say biases, but like it is interpretation and it's based on the person who's looking at it. So it can be a little difficult to make conclusions. So, did you have any mentors to help you through this process, or do you have a method of actually coming to conclusions?
Yeah, I have a team. I wouldn't say we exactly like mentor each other, but like we'll pull the data and have it all set and then discuss with each other why we think it is that way. Or because, and of course, like we're in tune with the food industry. We talk to our clients. We also talk to a lot of people who are in it. And so we can deduce the reason why like thing A is happening. But you're right. There are sometimes biases, and then that's just like discussing with my team always helps us keep each other in check. And also, these presentations go out to the broader industry. So the industry is welcome to keep us in check as well if they think that our hypothesis is wrong or like the reason why a certain trend is happening is wrong. But yes, collecting data is easy, or in some sense, but analyzing it is difficult. I do agree with that. Sometimes it gets tedious, especially like removing things that are off and like edge cases and things like that takes up a lot of time. But I think at the end of the day, the findings you have are always so interesting.
Mhm. It's great to know that you have a team to keep, I don't want to say keep each other in check, but it's good that you have a diversity of opinions in that. And I just have to say that sense of satisfaction when you've taken all this amount of data, you sat down, you've broken it down little bit by bit, and then you are able to get that one paragraph that's like just taken everything together. And on the outlook, it does to someone to be like, oh, it's not that much work, like deep down, like how much it's taken to get to that. And there's just nothing like nicer than just like a nice clear like breakdown of what you just did, even though it took you a very long time. It's so
Yes, I
satisfying.
agree. Sometimes it's just everything you did is like condensed to one slide or condensed to a fun data fact. You know how much work you put into it. And I think anyone else who works in data understands that feeling, but I feel that.
I know it's And it's always amazing as I continue to do like my thesis and all that, like you start to condense and you're like, it finally clicks to you about like why research papers might be so short sometimes because you're like, oh, that's so easy. Like but then you don't really realize how much has gone on behind it. And you're like, oh, now I understand why it takes people this long to do a project.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing I also wanted to talk about because I think that I was reading some of your articles when you were writing at Pinto and it was really fun. Just again, I think Pinto's approach to just how they talk about distilling this information, it's really cool because again, there's a lot of information there. And one of the things that stood out to me was you had wrote an article about how oh my gosh, how CPG brands can earn top spots in like on online retail searches. And for me, I'm kind of like a traditional shopper when it comes to buying products. I'm slowly starting to go into online shopping, but for the most part, I buy in store. So would you be able to talk a little bit more about like difference in terms for competition for a product category? Like, I know if you buy, let's say, like past, okay, I'm rambling. I guess where I want to go with this question is just like how the online retail space works because it's different, I could imagine, than like a store. So, like, I don't even know. Vaughn, I don't even know what I'm asking you. I'm just like, I want to learn more about this topic. So it's just like, how does competition work on an online retail space? And I guess how can like Pinto or Spins like help with that?
Yeah, I'll start by talking about how like data works behind the scenes for both brands and also retailers and things like that. So basically, what happens is there's so much information about a specific product just on the product itself, right? It's the nutrition facts panel, the ingredients, and then also like the romance copy of what they say about the product, things like that. And then of course certifications and things like that. So basically, like we would strip all that data and give that to the retailers and also the brand. But the issue that exists in the retail industry now is that sometimes brands don't see the importance of having that data, have it up to date. They just let it go. Like we went through a reformulation, but it's fine. Like we don't have to update it and things like that. But what happens is that when people search on a website, say, I'm looking for keto snacks, right? Let's say you reformulated your product and it wasn't keto compliant before, but now it is, and you didn't update your data. When I search for keto snacks, your product wouldn't show up. But like even one step before that, some retailers, when you search keto snacks, they only show things that have keto in its name. So take something like seaweed that's actually considered keto, but the brand your seaweed as like keto seaweed, it's just seaweed. But if you search keto snack, like seaweed won't pop up. But if you're a retailer that uses like data and you have things like this on the back end in your algorithm, if I'm a shopper and I type in keto snacks, like things like seaweed and chicharrones and things like that, typically consumed by the keto crowd will show up. And that's something that boosts sales, right? And that's something you can't do in a physical store. You can't be like, I want keto snacks. And you could tell the person in the aisle and you could not know at all like what you're talking about. So I think that's one like plus point to online shopping. If you have everything at your fingertips, like you can search gluten-free bread, you can search like vegan something, keto, whatever, and you'll get your answer. But that's not shading on shopping in stores. I also love to do that. The one thing that people and like brands struggle with is the fact that when you're shopping in stores, there's that candy aisle at the checkout counter, or not candy, just like a bunch of things that
the good stuff. Let's we go. The good
yeah,
stuff.
the good stuff. And it's very non-invasive. You're like waiting to get through the checkout counter, and then you see something that catches your eye, and you just pick that up and you buy it, right? But that's not possible like online if you think about it. Like if I'm going to check out online and then there's a pop-up and it's, would you like to buy this candy? I'd be really annoyed. So there's that sort of thing where you can't discover brands as much as you can online versus like in store. But I think that's slowly changing with the use of data, like being able to search things. Like nowadays, people don't just search like shampoo. there'll be like moisturizing shampoo or shampoo for curly hair, things like that. And like with data, if you have that metadata in the back end, you're always able to surface like these types of searches. And so that's what that article was about, like how CPG brands can win serve the algorithm. If you have good data and you have a partner that works with you to ensure like your products are always up to date in terms of images, in terms of data, and retailers are also having that like customer first mindset and that data mindset, will be able to show customers and everyone in general is just going to have a way better shopping experience. Is basically how that goes.
Okay, see that makes a lot more sense. Man, CPG brands, they got a lot to do because yeah. No, it makes total sense because I did try doing some online shopping like a few like at a grocery like an online grocery thing and I couldn't even look up the ingredient list. Like I found that really strange because I don't know why I wanted to look at it, but I was just it's something you naturally want to look at
Yeah,
food. And I was like, I'm online and I can't look up the ingredient list. I'm like, wouldn't that be like the easiest thing for you to do? So, and as well with purchasing online, I do sometimes like by terms because sometimes I don't remember the brand that I want. I don't know, like chunky tomato sauce or I was buying butter chicken sauce this week and I was like, I have no clue what brand to buy because it's something I don't typically buy. And I'm just like, what makes you different than this one? And there wasn't really enough to differentiate. And I'm like, I don't want to use price alone, but that's
exactly.
basically what they were like leaving me to. And I was like, that's not good.
Exactly. And so I think that's like something that both brands and retailers are starting to realize. Data is very important. That's what people use to make these decisions. And not only that, just like images as well. If the images look good and I have 6 images to look at, that's great for me versus being able just to look at the front image and I'm like, great, what does the back look like? What does the copy say? Because if you think about it, when we shop in person, we just look at the front, like we turn the product around, we look at everything before we make that decision to buy. And that's also what it's supposed to be like online. And I think a lot of brands and a lot of retailers had a rude awakening when COVID hit and everyone has to sort of transition to online shopping. Not had to, but a lot of people
Mhm.
choose to transition to online shopping. Yeah, that it's like the experience is just not up to par as of now. You know, a lot of people are working on it. A lot of brands are starting to realize that I'm not just buying a product because I know it or because it looks good. I'm buying it because it's low sodium. I'm buying it because it's vegan, or I'm buying it because it doesn't have like the allergen that I'm allergic to, things like that.
And that actually brings up a really good point about why online like purchasing can also be really powerful with the upcoming years because sometimes if you're illiterate on certain topics in that when you go in the store it can be very time consuming to you got to go and figure out okay is this one hitting every single criteria but if you can just filter it pretty quickly online that could really shake things up for you as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is like a big issue for people who have multiple health conditions or just have multiple health conditions in their house. Like maybe one person needs like a heart friendly diet because they're dealing with like cardiovascular disease, and maybe one person is diabetic and one person has kidney problems. And to be able to find products that fit all three diets or something like that is not very easy to do in stores. So you have to remember all the things that you can and cannot eat. And that's something that's very easily done online.
Well, that's really great because, yeah, again, and especially when you're in the store, don't get me wrong, when you're going to the grocery store to look for things that are taking your time going in that. But if you're maybe in a family with a very busy lifestyle, it can be, you don't really want to stand in line and try to figure out it. And you might have your few regular products, but what happens when you have that new product and then you're standing there debating about it and you might have your kid with you and maybe at home, it might be a little easier for you to navigate that. So.
Exactly. So it's even if that person isn't shopping online as per se, they may use like online platforms to discover products while they're in store. Maybe I'm like, the sauce that I usually buy is out of stock. Great. I need to find a new one. So what fits in my diet? And I'd be looking at all the ingredient lists to figure that out. I can just search online and find one that fits, and then that's what I'm going to buy in store. So I think there are a lot of, it's called like omni-channel, look at multiple channels, like online and both in store, like that they're both important. And yeah, I think that's something that's relevant to all of this.
And with that being said, I know that you, like I brought up at the beginning of the episode, like it looks like you're quite a bit of a foodie, especially when it comes to trying out new beverages. I know you've done a lot, but particularly in the beverage space. So I don't know, I just want to talk a little bit more about that and just what are some of the things that you're enjoying right now? And do you just enjoy walking into the grocery store, say this label looks cool, I'm going to buy that?
Actually, I find a lot of the products through LinkedIn because, like I said, like it's such a fun community on LinkedIn. I know LinkedIn gets a lot of shade, and everyone's just like showing off and writing all these like annoying posts. But I think that like some of the owners and like founders of the brands are always so passionate that I just help it be drawn into trying their products as well. And so that's how I find a lot of the products. And on the other hand, we also deal like at Pinto and both stints, like we always get brands coming to us as clients. And whenever I see their products in the system, I always find them pretty interesting and I tend to seek them out at the store as well. But yeah, I really love trying out all these new products. Not all that, I mean, I would say that not like I love everything that I try, but there's always a market for each product. I might not be the customer for it, but millions of other people might love it. But yeah, I would say that a few products that I really enjoyed so far was this jalapeno lime soda that I tried recently by Fresh Fizz. I think you can only get it in New York at the moment,
Okay.
and in California. But I'm hoping they start to pick up and can be found in a lot of other places soon. I got to try that because I went to a conference that was a really good one. And the second product that I really love is called Unreal. I don't know if you've heard of them, but do these like healthy versions of candy, and they have one for peanut butter cup. It's like a dark chocolate. Yeah, it's so good. Dark chocolate peanut butter cup. It's so good. Like if you can find it where you are, I definitely recommend. Super tasty.
I love conferences are so much fun to go to, trying like all these new products and that because I know Canada has like because I'm personally in Ontario in the GTA, and I know that I feel like maybe our space isn't as diverse as the United States, but that's just like my interpretation. I do think that's changing a little bit, so I have to be more hyper aware of things because most of them you'd more so have to purchase them like online or like in specialty shops. But I love going to conferences because there's just so many fun things that you like. For example, I would never even conceptualize having a jalapeno beverage.
Yeah, right?
And I just love right now, like we are in such a fun time in terms of the creator space with all these new food products and all that. I know that shout out to the Dough Bro, which is she's this like local, I met her recently and she has this like high protein, low sugar raw cookie dough. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good.
It is. I think I've tried that at the conferences too. I think that's Erica Rankin,
Yes,
right?
yes, you totally got it. And I was like, this is what I needed in my life because it was really bad when I found out that you could have like the Pillsbury cookie dough like raw now because like you're not supposed to eat it before, but I still did it even though I really shouldn't have. And then they said, oh, now you can eat it raw. And I was like, this is not good to know. I can't do this.
I think that's like a really interesting thing like that I also learned in college that there's a salmonella risk with eating raw cookie dough, and although it was on the packaging, people still ate it. So brands like Pillsbury, brands like Pillsbury and Nestle, because they have Toll House, they formulated it so that it's safe to eat now because too many people were still trying to eat it.
Well, it was smart on their part. And it's like I was hyper aware of being in this space. I was like, okay, I'm not supposed to do that. So I do like a small amount, even though I know I shouldn't have been doing that. But then when they made it aware, I was like, oh no, this is really bad to know. So like when Erica is like with her product, and it's been really cool to see. And I've been really excited as well, just with the space of more alternative beverages, because I don't drink like alcohol personally. So I found for a long time, I stuck to a lot of just sodas, like big name brands like Diet Pepsi and Coke and all that, but it's like I don't
Right.
always want to have that. Like I'd like to have some non-alcoholic beverages, and it's been like exploding in the past few years, and I've been really
Yes.
excited about that. And like even just like the popularity of like canned teas, like I know that they was like big in like Asian countries and that, but it never like quite like penetrated the market here that I could get it accessible. So it's been really exciting.
Yes, it's so much fun. Like in terms of soda, they have those wellness sodas like probiotic soda, prebiotics, which is like soda with less sugar and all the benefits that comes with all those things. Who would have thought? And it's just so great to see like people make interesting products, not just another soda, not just another candy and things like
Mhm.
that. Just something that can also be beneficial is the kind of like space that I really enjoy. And yeah, with non-alcoholic beverages, there's brands like Hello Cocktails, there's brands like Flyers, Eat Lip that come up with all these like alternative stuff. And also in the alcoholic space, like canned cocktail and things like that have been really interesting. And how seltzers have grown and all of that. Yeah, I always think that the food industry is such a interesting space to be in, and a lot of people are always so jealous of it, especially if you work like closely with the brands. Like we get a lot of the food products. I know my friends are always excited if I'm going to a conference. They're like, "What are you bringing back this time?" But yeah, I I know that like some, especially when I was graduating, I think like some
Mhm.
people are like they feel a little lost. Like maybe they don't like R&D and maybe they don't like being in QA and stuff like that. But I would challenge them to think about like all the other ways you could still be in the food industry, but be in a role that you really enjoy. And for me, that was data, but and hopefully for other people that's true as well. But always try to look for a role that you think you'll enjoy in the space because it's so large and you can be in so many roles. But only if you still want to be in the food industry. But yeah, I think that it's just a really nice space to be in.
I think that's some great advice, and you're absolutely right. Like a lot of people who go in, a lot of these businesses are like people who are really excited about what they make and all that. And there's so many opportunities to work with small companies if you want to maybe have more like an intimate thing. And you've also really opened my eyes to maybe even think about myself in terms of the future after graduating because I've thought about like R&D and that, but I've done a little bit with my co-op and I've just thought about it more and I'm like, I don't think that's the space I really particularly want to be in. And I've recently started really getting into my own data analysis and you've made me realize, okay, there's some more areas for that. So maybe I should look into it a little bit more because I think that you're just like a testament that like also a food science degree as well can really take you in so many places. Like you can go into QA, you can go into QC, you can go into R&D and then or flip it on its head and go into like data like what you were doing.
And like to think about it, data, you can work like data on the brand side, you can work data on the retailer side, right? If you're at a retailer, if I'm working at Kroger or Target or Walmart and things like that, who do you think's like curating the aisles when they're like at the end cap? Check out these keto snacks and things like that. That's done with data. Like that can be done with data and like making sure that your supermarket specific to your area is stocking products that people love. That's also done with data. And like I think that a lot of people don't realize that um, there's so much to it. And these roles may be traditionally held by other people, but think about the experience that you can bring in considering like all the food knowledge that like anyone with a food science or dietetics or nutrition degree holds. Like you're giving it that extra perspective to that retailer and also like to that brand or wherever you choose to work at. It's a very valuable experience that I hope that people will see that you can go anywhere with this degree.
Sure. And I think that I'm just speaking on behalf of retailers. I don't know if this is true, but I could imagine them being like happier to involve someone who might already be really involved in the industry, like with that like core interest rather than coming from like an outside data company that they could be analyzing any set of data and it's not really as important to them. But like coming from someone who like truly is passionate about food, like that can really take you far.
Yeah, and you could be the one at the forefront. Like maybe it takes a while for someone in data to say, hey, I think keto is really taking off, like say a few years ago. But because we're so involved in like the industry and we like keep up with friends who are in industry and things like that, and it just genuinely interests us. Like 5 years ago, maybe we could have been saying like, hey, I think this keto thing is getting popular before like anyone caught on. So that's the perspective that we can always.
As well with you. So we talked about how you personally like really pushed yourself to get to where you are, but I'd be curious to know, is there anything that you're like looking at right now? Are there any skills or is there any topics that you are actively working or learning about right now?
Yeah, I always think that you can always be learning. And then with the acquisition, we also changed tools. And so I have to learn the new tools as well. Like I said before that I used to use Tableau, which is data visualization, but this company uses Power BI. And so I actually sort of learn something new again. They also use, Pinto was like a NoSQL database, but this company uses SQL. So I have to brush up on my SQL knowledge and things like that. I think data is always ever evolving and you can always, there's always something new to learn. There's always another way to automate something, always a better way to look at data more effective and things like that. And so that's what I'm currently looking at. And something else that really interests me is that like all of this data is fun, but how do I get it out to people who might be interested? Like not everyone wants to see the boring slide deck. So, there's video, there's TikTok, there's fun graphics and things like that. And so always just trying to find like content is across so many industries. And I think that sometimes businesses get trapped in this idea that, oh, it has to look professional for everyone to see our value. But in actual fact, it just has to be like entertaining and it has to give you value. So it doesn't matter that it's not in the boring slide deck. If I get my point across in a 15-second TikTok video, that's good enough for me. And so just shaking up the industry a bit. It doesn't have to be boring, can be fun. Data is often looked at as something you do behind the desk and it's like boring and stuff like that. But I think there's always a way to make things fun.
I definitely agree. And it's like it mirrors a lot in the sciences because I know sciences, we get told this a lot. And it's funny, we go through like graduate thesis and communicating in itself is like an art and it is a skill as well. And not just having a back-to-back conversation, but taking data and visualizing it to a diverse set of audience like that in itself is a very like lucrative job that you could have as well. And I think being able to communicate in a way, it's fun, it's unique, and I really think that it can really make you stand out because that's something that I'm happy that my graduate program's been really keen on telling us is just be able to communicate what you do, because at the end of the day, if you can't communicate properly, it really does not matter if you spent like 80 hours on the project. If no one understands you, then you might as well have not done anything.
Yes, exactly. So I think, yeah, communication is a big skill, not only in that aspect, but like in the workplace, right? Like going from college to work, like being able to communicate your ideas to your colleagues is very important. Like it could be a multi-million-dollar generating idea, but if you can't get your point across, like it's never going to take off. So that's a very good point to make. And on the topic of like research and making it fun, I think people like Andrew Huberman, I don't know if you know him, but he's like a professor at Stanford that has his own podcast about things like to do with like neuropsychology and stuff like that. And people don't give the public credit. Like there's always a market for it. Like people are always interested in things like that. And it's just making it digestible and fun to consume, and he gets millions and millions of views. So anything can happen.
For sure. I'm gonna have to check him out. Oh, I just love this conversation because this is the stuff that I'm just so interested in learning more about. Just like we had this one presentation where we had someone come in and just talk about like how people that they're an illustrator for the Scientific American and how they were able to create like biological drawings, like how that in itself is a very unique art where you can't like you couldn't necessarily they didn't want to hire someone who was just like an artist per se, like they wanted someone with that duality of of art and actually a biologist. So I think
Yeah.
that shows as well, like there's an intersection that you don't have to throw, if you want to be an artist, you don't have to throw away like that logical, like data side that you love. But if you love data, don't just, you don't have to be like a robot just analyzing.
Yeah. Exactly. And I heard that those illustrators actually make a lot of money because it's a niche, right? Not everyone can do that. Not everyone. And I remember learning like biochemistry and stuff like that. I always enjoy like the videos and stuff like it
Mm-hmm.
helps you visualize things even more like that. And that's what data, like everyone can see numbers, but it's so much nicer in graphs and in, with a good story and things like that. And so that's a very big plus point if you're able to do that in the workspace.
To showcase that off, I'm going to make sure to share in our show notes some of the articles that were written on Pinto by you, because I think that they really demonstrate just taking like good amounts of information and just like transforming them into something that's digestible. And as well as your Medium article, because I was glancing through it through this podcast. I was like, oh, this is so cool what she's doing. Although I'd love to keep talking with you about this, because I'm probably going to continue this conversation after, because I have so many
Yeah.
questions that I got to ask you, because this is really super interesting to me. But alas, that is the end of the end of our little time that we have together. But before I let you go, I just want to ask, where can people find you?
Yeah, I think I'm the most active on LinkedIn. So just Evonne Chan on LinkedIn. You'll probably find me there. Definitely send a connection. I love being connected with people in the food industry. And if you have any questions about data or how I could make food data more interesting to the broader audience, I'm always all ears. I'm all about making that information accessible to everyone. And yeah, I'm excited to be connected with anyone in the food industry.
I love it. Once again, thank you so much, Yvonne, for taking time to come on the show. I think this is just such a cool concept, and I'm so happy that I was able to share it with everyone.
Thank you so much, Veronica. I think this is like the first time I ever got the chance to talk about food and data together. And yeah, I think it's like a really nice niche in the food space. And so happy that I could talk about it and also learn more from your perspective as well.